Hey everybody, it's Thomas with Get Out Arizona in partnership with Photo Forum once again, as they are the sponsors of today's video. And you are watching another great episode of Garage Talk, so let's get on it. Now, today we are going to be doing a practical review, all right, of the Fuji X-H2. Now, this isn't going to be a nerdy review like Gerald Undone. They're amazing. His videos are amazing. I subscribe to him. That link's going to be down below. And it's not going to be a deep dive into the menu system like Michael the Maven. Again, I can't outdo him. The link to his menu video is down below as well. And this is not going to be how to enhance the performance of your Fuji X-H2. That one belongs to Martine Hilborn, and that link is down below. These are all three creators, YouTube creators that I subscribe to. Their content's really good. You should check them out. But what this is going to be is a practical review on my thoughts and experiences over the last 4 weeks shooting with the Fuji X-H2. Now, there's not going to be any fancy B-roll or dreamy cutaway shots. This is it, just the straight dope, and I will be comparing this to some of my experiences with my Sony gear because I shoot Sony professionally, mainly the A7 IV and my Alpha 1, but I will also keep in mind that this is a Fuji camera. We love Fuji cameras for what they do for us. I own 2 Fuji cameras myself, and the X Pro 3 and the X100F, and I mean, if you're a Fuji shooter, you expect certain things to be the case. So I'm also going to refer to my notes that I have right here, just so I don't get sidetracked or forget anything. So first, let's talk about it. The Fuji X-H2 is the high-resolution version of their flagship cameras. You also have the X-H2S, which has a 26 megapixel stacked backside illuminated sensor, where this one is a 40 megapixel not stacked backside illuminated sensor. Both APS-C sensors. This one will allow you to shoot 8K. The S version will not, but you can shoot ProRes in both of these thanks to the CFast Type B, CF Express Type B card that you'll find in here. It does have dual card slots, which is nice. You know, the ergonomics on this. This is not, as we kind of go down, I'll elaborate on some of these. This is definitely not your Fuji camera that you're used to with the top dials and everything. We'll talk about that more later. This was very much shaped like a traditional mirrorless camera. Some Fuji shooters weren't happy with that. Others were very appreciative of it. I appreciate it for what this camera represents. The ergonomics are good. My hand feels good. Finger placement is good on everything. I've got very familiar front and back dials. Just really nice. I can't complain about the ergonomics at all. It has a PASM dial, all right, which is going to be very familiar to any Canon shooter, Nikon, Sony. This is great, you know, and for what this camera represents and what the H2S represents, this was a smart move on Fuji's part. You have a diopter as usual as far as on the EVF, which it does have a really good EVF. Wasn't happy with the back screen, but we'll get to that. And so that familiar layout is nice. There's not a learning curve where some people going from a Sony camera, say getting an X Pro 3 or an XT5, which is their newest one, but it's that tactile sensation we love with the Fuji cameras. I often refer to a Fuji camera as a photographer's camera for that reason, and that's one of the main reasons why I love them. Now, the menu system is so-so, and I think at certain points there's way too many choices, which we'll talk about later, but it's a Fuji menu. There's nothing fabulous or sexy about it. It is very much straightforward Fuji menu. I wish you can use the touchscreen in the menu. They still haven't implemented that. I don't know if it's something that they could do in a firmware update. It would be nice to have that option. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, most of the time I use the buttons, but it's nice. It's nice to have that option. The user interface, again, it's Fuji, you know. You have the Q menu, you have all your familiarities as far as if you're a Fuji shooter, you're not going to go, oh my God, they completely redesigned it, what are they doing? Very familiar as far as the interface. Now, and again, the interface is something as a Fuji shooter, you either love it Some Fuji shooters, and they're trying to shoot a Fuji camera, can't stand it. I learned to appreciate it over the years as far as shooting Fuji cameras coming from other cameras. Like I said, there was no touch control. Now the monitor, wow. This was a little flimsier than what I wanted it to be, or what I was hoping that it would be. And if anything, I think this is going to be the weak point of the camera, especially for video shooters and constantly flipping that monitor out and turning it and everything like that. I think this could cause some problems, like some shooters did see in the X Pro 3. And again, you know, some people are like, oh, the good, the bad, the ugly. I don't think there's anything ugly about this camera, but there are some things that I will bring up for potential owners of this camera. Now, when it comes to low light performance, this does a good job for a Fuji camera. And again, for an APS-C sensor, and I've said many times before that Fuji does make, in my opinion, the best APS-C sensor on the market with what it can do as far as picture quality for photography. Now with video, you could shoot in F-Log 1 and 2. It's great in that respect, but it will always be trying to play catch up to a full frame sensor when it comes to low light performance. This doesn't perform like my Sony cameras in the dark when it comes to video, nor photography. But that's okay. I still love this camera, and you could still get a usable image at 6400 ISO. In a pinch, if you needed to, you could push it to 12.8, a little bit of cleanup and post, you're gonna have a good image. But again, this is a product of the sensor size, not necessarily the sensor itself, if that makes sense, the quality of the sensor itself. Great images. Again, we buy Fuji cameras for great still images, amazing. And the film emulsions, I'm a monochrome shooter. I have some cameras that have monochrome sensors in them. And when I shoot a Fuji camera, I am not shooting RAW. I am shooting in one of two film emulsions. I'm either shooting in Acros, and it's a recipe of my own, by trying out different things and suggestions from other YouTube creators, or I shoot in Provia. Those are the two that I choose, and they're in my quick queue menu system, and that's it. I've done raw images with this one where I've done focus bracketing for landscape and just some other photo tests, and the raw images are stunning. It's what you would expect for a high resolution sensor, especially from Fuji. So the image quality is great. The film emulsions are fantastic as always, and again, for me, the main reason why I shoot a Fuji camera. So it should meet, if not exceed, your expectations there. Now, someone might ask, Thomas, what about pixel shift? I've never been a fan of pixel shift. To me, it's kind of gimmicky, and unless nobody is breathing, the earth has stopped rotating, pixel shift never comes out the way that I want it to. So, you know, it's there if you want to use it. If not, you know, I'm not going to say you're missing out, because I don't feel that you're missing out on that. So let's talk about still photography for a little bit and the capabilities. It will do 13 frames a second electronic shutter with no crop. And this is important. You can go faster, but you're going to have a 1.1 crop, I believe it is. And I don't want my images cropped. I'd rather have a slower burst rate and no crop on my images than the other way around. Now, this is going to boil down to personal preference. If speed is something that you need, yes. You could sacrifice a little bit of image size to get an additional 10 frames per second, and it works. It works fine. I didn't have any issues with the drive mode. In a mechanical shutter, you're going to get 15 frames per second, both of which are already very respectable, okay? I don't feel, I mean, at some point, where are we going to stop? You know, my Alpha 1 shoots 30 frames a second. That in still photography, that's shooting video, okay? Just in still photos, which is all video is, but come on. You know, at some point it becomes a marketing gimmick. The camera is just fine the way it is at 13 and 15 electronic shutter, mechanical shutter respectively. But you can go faster if you're willing to have a little bit of crop. The autofocus for photography, it's good. It's Fuji. You know, again, it's not going to win awards for its lightning fast speed, nor its stickiness when it comes to tracking, but it's good. For a Fuji photographer, you are going to enjoy this because they have improved it, but it's still not up to the level what I think Canon and Sony are at. Sony being at the head of the pack by this much from Canon. But they are making strides. And I'm hoping that with firmware updates, we'll talk about that a little later, that it'll be improved even more. And I feel that in the X-H2S, you're going to get a little bit better quality with your autofocus, with your continuous autofocus. So again, my 2 cents, it's still, you're not going to be disappointed. But when we come to video, not so much. And we'll talk a little bit about that further on down. There was some disappointments there. But we'll wrap up and talk a little bit more about that. Good Ibis. It's a Fuji camera. I've never been disappointed with what I've gotten out of the Fuji camera with Ibis. I mean, the X-T4 left us a little bit wanting. I think and Fuji refers to it as an OIS lens, Sony's are OSS, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna realistically, I think, about 7 stops as far as your handheld photo and video goes, which for someone with a steady hand is more than enough. Are you gonna be shooting, 2-second long exposures? No. Nobody's there yet. Not even Panasonic or Olympus. But you're going to be able to get that down to about 1/10 of a second, I think, for a shooter, an average still shooter with a good steady hand already. You're going to be able to get down to about 1/10 of a second, which is actually very impressive. Plenty of custom settings to choose from. Now, Fuji and I think Olympus both, and Panasonic, the 3 of them, their menus, man, we'll talk about deep dive, and this is where you're going to want to check out Michael the Maven's deep dive tutorial. Holy smokes. And for someone who's just getting into photography, or maybe they're, been doing photography for a bit, but they're not used to this menu system, people complain about Sony menu systems. Sometimes having too many choices is bad, and I think that's where this menu system tends to trip some people up. There's a lot of options here, my friends, and I'm the type of person, though, too, where even though I want to know everything my camera does, I'm only going to really learn what I need, okay? Yes, it's nice that X does this, and Y does that, and Z does this. But at the end of the day, am I going to be using X, Y, Z? No, I might be using, E, F, G, and those are my primary things, so I'm going to know those inside and out. It's kind of what this is. Now, sure, I'm thankful. Customization's awesome, but sometimes too much is just too much, and now again, it almost becomes, really like a marketing thing. But you do have plenty of settings to choose from. Now, the one thing I dislike in that regard is your C1 through 7, which is amazing, by the way, that you could set 7 different custom shooting modes for yourself. You have to go on the menu and you actually have to designate. C1 is going to be for photo, C2 is going to be for video, and you have to do this before you can even save anything. And Lord forbid you try to save something video in a C custom mode that wasn't designated for video, it won't let you do it. I wish they just would have said, here, you have C1 through 7, and when you're done doing your settings, you could just set it to whichever one you want. It would have been a whole lot simpler. But that setting is, I wouldn't say buried, but it's deep in the menu. Oh, I wouldn't even say deep, kind of like just below the surface in the menu system instead of making it obvious. So just be aware of that. But you can go in here and you could set for performance, high performance modes. You could set for high resolution modes on the EVF and on the screen. There's a lot of stuff you can do that is useful. I just wish it would have been a little easier to get to. And then some of those submenus have a submenu, have a submenu. I don't think there's a need for that. Now I think you're overcomplicating things. So, but again, if you're a Fuji shooter, you're kind of used to this. So the OLED screen on the top, it's nice. It's nice just to have that automatic feedback, especially if I'm looking like this and I'm concentrating on something else, having that, hey, here's your card, here's your battery life, all this critical information right there. Is it a deal breaker? Is it something that if other cameras didn't have, I would, cry like a little girl? No. It's nice to have, but again, I can live without it, but I do like the integrated right into the chassis for your camera strap. So you can put the Peak Design little anchors there. Whew, that's nice. Those dingy little triangles, I cut those sons of guns right off of my Sony cameras. They're annoying. So let's talk a little bit about video, since I do a lot of video shooting myself. Open gate 8K over HDMI. This is nice. I'm not going to say that it's not, and I wish Sony would get with the program, because we're seeing more and more cameras allow open gate shooting on their cameras, going to, say, an Atomos Ninja 5 Plus. How many people are going to shoot open gate 8K? Again, here we go, a small percentage. So where I don't think this is necessarily entirely marketing, I also don't think this is entirely useful for the garden variety average shooter for this camera. I think that most people shooting video on this camera are going to be posting to YouTube, or they're going to be doing like maybe weddings or something along those lines. And at that point, you're definitely not shooting open gate 8K on your Atomos Ninja. You're shooting 4K, and you're probably shooting in ProRes, which you can do internally, okay? But if you're doing to an Atomos, and that's it, okay? Not entirely marketing, but it's one of those things that in 2022, going into 2023, it's still not useful. Most people aren't gonna do it. Most people don't even have machines that can process 4K ProRes without doing a buttload of proxies and then adding to your workflow. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. You can shoot 8K 30 frames a second in ProRes internally, which I think is great. Again, we're talking about something that how many people are actually going to do, a very small percentage. But if we look at the bigger picture here, the fact that today we're able to record 8K video with a mirrorless camera should be looked at, you know, as inspiring, okay? Again, I don't think it's totally marketing on this camera, but again, the usefulness, it's just not there. And I have a machine that can friggin' edit the 4K in DaVinci Resolve, or the 8K in DaVinci Resolve, and I did not use the 8K. It's just, why add to your workflow if you don't need to? The 4K in HQ ProRes is more than enough, and it was beautiful, and I absolutely loved it. And I'll tell you the reason why I shot in ProRes here in a second. So again, it's great to have that option. I don't have to worry. I know I'm getting great footage. That 4K ProRes edits very efficiently on my system. So I didn't have any drop frames, nothing. So it's great. Now, the reason why I edited in ProRes and not in just standard like MOV is because even though there's seriously 30 different options you could do for video, which is ridiculous, that I'm not happy with. That's way too many choices for pretty much every shooter. I'm scrolling through going, you gotta be kidding me. You cannot shoot 4K all Intra in H.264 in 422 10-bit. You can only shoot 4K all Intra in H.265 422 10-bit all Intra, and that's BS, okay? I don't want to shoot 265. It's compressed. I don't like it. I'd rather have a larger file size and shoot, you know, 264. I don't care. The fact that they gave you 30 different options, but all Intra, 4K, 422, you know, in H.264, Fuji, seriously. And that's more of a nitpick than anything, but still. If you don't have to shoot compressed, don't. It's going to make your editing a little bit more tedious and laborious, but, you know, it is what it is as far as that goes. So, and again, that's more of a nitpick than anything. I do like the fact that they have F-Log 1 and 2, and you can download those profiles from Fuji's site. I'll have a link down below for that. There's no charge. Fuji doesn't charge for their LUT, but it's nice to have that conversion LUT. And it's really good. If you watch Gerald Undun's video, he does a great video on that. Fuji does a really good job with their log. I don't think it's quite there yet as far as someone's going to shoot their next documentary. But again, if we're talking about what this camera represents, which we'll do in our closing, and I'm pretty excited about it. Now, the other thing I really enjoy as far as like the video shooting modes is you can actually record in Acros on this, or Provia for that matter, any of the film emulsions, and I think that's great. Now, Do I have conversions in DaVinci to do that stuff? Absolutely. But to do a down and dirty monochrome, you know, that was really, really cool. Now, if we go to the focusing system on video, it's not. You're gonna be disappointed. As a Sony shooter, I was disappointed. There was a lot of times where that focus was hunting and pecking and it was looking for me and it would lock on and then it would not lock on. And I tried a bunch of different settings and I watched a bunch of different people's videos on how to properly set the focus for video on this camera. I'm sorry, you know? So if it's the one thing I would say on this as far as a major ding, it's the autofocus in video. It's just not there yet. And I wouldn't really choose this to be my main camera if I were to shoot a documentary or something where that focus was critical, unless I was locked off on a tripod and say maybe I could manual focus or something like that and there wasn't a whole lot of movement, sure, that's fine. But for run and gun, this ain't the one, you know, and I'll be brutally honest about that. But again, I feel there's room for improvement. So that being said, before we get to our conclusion and who's this camera for, let's talk about our sponsor, Photoforum, guys. Photoforum has been a fixture in the photography community in Phoenix, Arizona for 50 years now, which is amazing. They are staffed with working professionals like me. So instead of going someplace and you're gonna talk to a salesperson who's good at regurgitating product information, but bad on actually explaining to you how to do maybe photo or video or set up your menu system, you're not gonna find that at Photoforum. We believe in pairing the right camera and camera system to the individual that comes in by asking critical questions on the type of photography they do. Are they a novice? Are they an enthusiast? Are they a professional? We also provide classes, both in the fall and spring. You know, check out that. Our link's gonna be down below. For the beginner photography, Photography 101, composition, intro to video, we are building a photography and videography community in the Valley of the Sun, and we want you guys to be a part of it. So if that excites you, check out the link below, come down and check the store. We're open Monday through Saturday. It's amazing, and at the end of the day, you get a chance to talk to me, and who could pass up that opportunity? So, all right, guys, that's enough. Photoforum, though, thanks again for sponsoring the video. I really appreciate it. So, let's talk about who this camera is for and looking forward. Now, for the Fuji shooter, you've been shooting Fuji and you've been looking for a camera from Fuji that's actually going to shoot quality, solid video and give you a lot of options to do it. This camera's for you. Or the X-H2S camera is for you, depending if you want high resolution stills or you're okay with a 26 megapixel crop sensor, which is just fine, by the way. I'm not dinging that at all. This embodiment represents a lot of technology and technological advancements for Fujifilm. I think they've done an amazing job with both of their cameras, both of their H2 series cameras. But there's room for improvement. There's room for improvement in the autofocus. There's room for improvement in the menu system. And some people might think those, you know, not the autofocus, but maybe the menu system is nitpicky, but these are things that add to the user experience. And if the user experience isn't enjoyable, no one's really gonna wanna shoot the camera, which I think is tragic because this is a great camera. And even for its shortcomings that I've talked about, I would still use this camera. If I was going out for casual photography and video day, I wouldn't mind shooting this. I think I would choose a different lens. The kit lens on this is great, but at f4, I'd rather take a 35mm prime and just, you know, work it like no other. But it's still a great camera. It's what you expect from Fuji. And the picture quality and your film emulsions, everything, the ergonomics are fantastic. Again, has a PASM dial. Maybe old school traditional Fuji shooters might not appreciate that, but I think a lot of current day mirrorless operators who haven't really shot X Pro series or an XT series camera definitely will. You have an abundance of ports, which is great. The fact, you know, you got USB-C over power. You have a full-size HDMI. Come on, Canon. I'm calling you guys out. Headphone monitoring, everything you could possibly want on this camera. It's a solid camera. But as we look forward, I think what these represent is an enormous stepping stone for Fuji. And I'm excited to see what they can provide with firmware updates for this camera, and I am super excited to see what they provide or what they release in the next couple years as far as the Mark IIs of the H2 and the H2S. I think at that point, if they would integrate phase detection more, like Sony and Canon and their focusing systems, and a few other refinements on these, I think they are going to be a force to be reckoned with a mirrorless, a true mirrorless hybrid camera. So, which is exciting, because when you have more companies that are innovating like that, it drives the other companies to innovate even more, which we benefit from. Seriously, us as the consumer, the photographer, the videographer, we're the ones that benefit from it. So I think that's a great thing. And at the end of the day, I think this is a great camera. If someone were to ask me, would I be purchasing one? No. I am an ex-pro shooter. That's kind of my thing with Fuji, and I'm very, very happy with my Sony cameras. But for the Fuji shooter or someone who wants to become a Fuji shooter, yes, this is a very worthy purchase, and I do feel you will not be disappointed with this camera in any way, shape, or form. So, on that note, my friends, I hope you have enjoyed this practical review of the Fuji X-H2. Like, subscribe, bell notifications. Seriously, guys, it's the trifecta. It's what keeps this channel going with park passes, gas, coffee money. I know, it's amazing. There's going to be some links down below. We're going to have the link to Photo Forum, so check us out there, please. Sponsors of today's video. We're going to have links to our social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. It's the devil's work, but it's necessary to get the word out for Get Out Arizona. Day to day, we announce group hikes, we announce group rides. It's a whole lot of fun. Get outdoors with us and have a good time. I am also going to have, again, as a reminder, some links down below. Gerald Undone, Mike the Maven, Martine Hilborn. Those guys are awesome. And those videos, if you're thinking about buying the Fuji camera, are videos you should check out as well. Seriously. And there's going to be affiliate links down below. If you make a qualifying purchase, you will not be charged any extra, but we will receive a small commission, which of course helps you to count on going. So, my friends, on that note, as we're getting ready to leave, what do we say? What are the tenets? Be kind to yourself and others, be amazing stewards on that trail, and we have to ask, seriously guys, what are you waiting for? Huh? Get out Arizona. We will see you on that next adventure, my friends. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.